IBC, it's Rob here with another video, and this video it's kind of a response to a video that Callum Rhodes put up yesterday, where he was talking about something that is something that I've always kind of thought about, that I think is really important, and that's band names. So how a band comes up with a name, and I've always thought there's some really sort of strange choices for band names. Smiths, of course. I just think it's a great name. I think it, suits the band. But a lot of bands choose names, and you just think, where's that come from? So I've got an absolute stack of records to go through here. I think this is like one of those videos that seems like a good idea, and halfway through it you kind of regret making it, and you sort of regret watching it. But I'm going to go with it. So back in the sort of early 80s, I formed a band, and we never did any gigs or anything. We just sort of jammed and stuff, and I gave us the name Red, White and Blue. We were like a mod band, and I always thought it's a great name for a mod band. I was surprised no one else went with it, but yeah. And my son was in a band. If you go on YouTube and put Wilson, the song Godsend, I think they've got 2,500 views on that video, but that's from about 8 years ago. And the problem with choosing a name like Wilson is, it's got a sporting sort of relationship, and also Brian Wilson, and quite difficult to sort of find Wilson when you put it in on YouTube. So a lot of bands sort of choose a name, and sort of before the internet as well, and you have problems trying to find them. Same with if you choose a BC channel, you choose your name, and some people end up changing it because people can't find them. Anyway, I'm going to go through, stop rambling, and just go through some bands here. I've got loads of records here. So here's a band who I really like. They're called Bears Den. This album's from 2016. They're like a duo. If you follow me on Instagram, I was put some clips of this up on yesterday. And I just think Bears Den is a terrible name for a band. So I don't know what made them come up with that, but it's totally forgettable, and even I forget about them. And then it just comes into my head and listen to Bears Den. But yeah, Bears Den, a terrible name for a band. The most famous band of all time is the Beatles. But I think if you think about it, do you think the Beatles is a good name for a band? I don't think it's a good name. I think you kind of just used to saying the Beatles, but a lot of people may disagree, but I don't think it's a good name for a band. But yeah, the Beatles. So I don't class that as a good name. Here's a bad name for a band. So Pond. So Pond sort of help Tame Impala, Kevin Parker out. And they're a band on their own right called Pond, but Pond's a terrible name for a band. Last year, my favourite album of the year was by W.H. Lung. This album, Incidental Music. So W.H. Lung, I'm not sure what the reference for that is. I just know it's an absolutely lousy name for a band, but they've chose it, so they've got to go with it. So yeah, W.H. Lung. Another band name that I think's pretty unimaginative is The National. So back in the early days when I started to get into The National, I kept forgetting the name of the band. And then when I speak to people, because The National aren't that sort of general people who I sort of speak to aren't really don't really know The National, and when you say The National, they sort of look a bit blank at you. So I just think it's a bit of a nothing name. So yeah, The National. Another band with a pretty unimaginative name is the Foals. So the Foals are a pretty big band in the UK, very popular live band, and they've quite a successful career, but yeah, pretty unimaginative name, the Foals. Here's the name I really like, Public Service Broadcasting. So you might think, you know, it sounds like some sort of educational name, and it is a little bit educational. And listening to public service broadcasting, you know, it's a little bit like being in school sometimes. So it really suits them. I really like the name Public Service Broadcasting. Now, what about one of my favourite bands of all time, Elbow? So I read somewhere that Guy Garvey called Elbow Elbow because it's it's a beautiful word that doesn't offend anyone, and everyone's got an elbow. But I think it's a bit, it doesn't sort of inspire me, Elbow. So yeah, I think Elbow's not a great name for a band. Another pretty lame name for a band is Alt J. So yeah, Alt J won the Mercury Prize in 2012 for this album, which I think is called Alt J. Alt J is sort of art in electronic, little bit Radioheady, a bit Pink Floydy, I suppose. But you know, again, a band who could do with a better name than Alt J. So yeah, Alt J. Here's someone who's just got a bit of a dodgy name, Graham Parker. So I think I did say before on the video that I think if Graham Parker was called Elvis Costello and Elvis Costello was called Graham Parker would have been as successful as Elvis Costello, and Elvis Costello would have... Anyway, you get the idea. So yeah, Graham Parker maybe should have been called just the Rumour, maybe. Here's a new band who have got a terrible name, so it's Pottery. So yeah, I mean, when you think of pottery, you certainly don't think of rock and roll and taking drugs and having a great time and spending time with lots of women and, you know, living a high life. You know, you think of sort of sitting indoors and watching Ghost. So yeah, Pottery, not a great name for a band. One of my favourite names for a band is, of course, King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard. So the great thing about King Gizzard is the fact that when people sort of first get into them, they actually forget the name of the band and they get the name of the band in the wrong order, which always makes me laugh. So yeah, I love the name King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard. I've always liked Haircut 100, so yeah, I've always thought that's quite funny. Every time someone at work, even now, we're in 2020, and people get their haircut, and people who don't even know who Haircut 100 are, and you'll say, oh, Haircut 100, and they just start laughing. So yeah, I like the name Haircut 100. One of my sort of favourite bands of the last 20 years is the Twang, and I don't think the Twang is a very good name for a band, so I'll leave it at that. Here's another band with a terrible name. So it's Squid. You know, I'm not a lover of squid. I do like seafood, but squid. I remember having a really bad experience after having some squid. I had to actually stop the car, and I'll leave the rest to your imagination. So yeah, Squid. I don't think is a great name for a band, but I do like this name for a band. It's the Unknown Mortal Orchestra. So the Unknown Mortal Orchestra, I think they're from New Zealand, and part of the attraction of this album was the name of the band. I'd heard a couple of tracks, Honeybee, but when I actually got this album I was quite disappointed. But I've been playing it a bit recently and it's sort of growing on me. So yeah, Unknown Mortal Orchestra, I quite like that name. I also quite like Big Audio Dynamite. I think that's a pretty cool name for a band. Always like that one. Here's a really Pretentious. I've got this album. I've got a few albums here. The only reason I've got them is because of the VC. You watch a VC video in the early days and you think, you see an album and you get it and you sort of learn from your mistakes. I don't do that very often anymore. I sort of go with my own stuff. But yeah, the Alan Parsons Project. So I don't think you can get more pretentious than that. And I've seen Alan Parsons being interviewed, and yeah, it's pretty pretentious. Now, this is a great name for a band, Susie and the Banshees. So I've always thought that was a great name for a band. Susie and the Banshees. A lot of punk bands, sort of 999, is a good name. The Vibrators, you know, not sort of album you want to take home and, you know, talk to your mum about, but yeah, the Vibrators and stuff like that. Everything But the Girl. I'm quite a fan of Everything But the Girl, but I think the name of the band's a little bit wet, and it never sort of inspired me. You know, if your mates are saying, you know, who you're listening to at the moment, and you say Everything But the Girl, you know, it's sort of a deathly silence. So yeah, Everything But the Girl, not a great name for a band. The Blow Monkeys, I think, is a bit naff. Bit of a nothing name for a band. So yeah, but I do like the Manic Street Preachers. I think that's a great name for a band. I'm not sure what it means. There maybe is a meaning for it, but you know, you'd always sort of say, I'm listening to the Manics, and people knew who you were on about. But yeah, Manic Street Preachers, great name for a band. I've not got the Super Furry Animals here, but that's probably my favourite name for a band. Humble Pie is a little bit, you know, I'm not sure, you know, think of Humble Pie, not really a name of a band that sort of inspires you. So yeah, Humble Pie, I think, give that one a miss, but it's isn't a bad album. I do actually think Pink Floyd's a pretty good name for a band. Sort of suits them. I did tell you that, you know, you'd be watching this video thinking, you know, what's the point? But, you know, I'm going to ramble on. We're only 11 minutes in, and I've got plenty more to show. So yeah, Pink Floyd, I think it's a pretty good name for a band. It's one of the worst names for a band. And it's sort of, really, it's, yeah, War on Drugs. So, you know, it's like a headline from a tabloid or something you see on Newsnight, or just, it doesn't evoke positivity, and it just sort of makes you feel a little bit negative. And yeah, I just don't get why they're called War on Drugs. So yeah, that's sort of a name that's always put me off. This is an album that got really slagged off in 1999, and I've got the album, and I really like the name of the band. It's the New Radicals, so I just like the name of the band. I used to love the song You Get What You Give, but it's been, you know, overplayed, and it's probably not my favourite now, but I did used to really love that song at the time. But, you know, despite the haters, I think it's a pretty good album. So yeah, the New Radicals. I do think the B-52s is a pretty good name for a band, you know. Sort of just suits them, and it just rolls off the tongue, and it's a good name. So yeah, B-52s, that's a good one. And also Dexys Midnight Runners, I think that's a good name for a band. A lot better than Dexys. I think Dexys Midnight Runners. What we got here? 10cc. You know, there's a story going around that 10cc actually is a measurement of male fluid. I don't want to get too much into it. Whether that's actually true, I'm not too sure. But yeah, maybe Google it, and instead of me talking about it. But yeah, 10cc. The Doobie Brothers, you know, I mean, that's a pretty lame name for a band. Certainly doesn't inspire me. But I've actually discovered that, you know, Doobie Brothers, particularly last year I was listening to a little bit of Doobie Brothers, and this is a good album. So yeah, the Doobie Brothers, though, not a great name for a band. Right, I've got this album, and people think, well, how have you got that album? But I do have albums in my collection by artists that, you know, I have no idea. So yeah, Dire Straits. So I picked this up. I can't really excuses of some Hall of Records, and this was in there. I don't actually think I might have played it, but you know, if any band sort of name sums them up, then I'd say Dire Straits. So as you can see, I'm not a great fan. I picked this album up because you know, I was getting into all American music and that, and then, you know, I woke up one day and thought, you know, what am I doing? So I picked this album up, Flying Burrito Brothers. So, you know, make your own mind up. It's a pretty terrible name for a band, and I can assure you, this is a terrible album. So yeah, if anybody wants this album, then you know, I'm going to do a trade or something. But yeah, shocking. Again, Little Feat, you know, not A great name for a band, is it Little Feat? You know, what do you think of when you think of Little Feat? It's just, you know, the album cover sort of sums up Little Feat. You know, they don't seem to be able to make their mind up going off that, what they actually stand for. And when you listen to the music, it does have you scratching your head a little bit. Free, I suppose this comes into, on Callum's video, he was talking about Cream, and I suppose Free probably suits the band. They sort of have a free sound, and I don't mind the name Free. I think it sort of suits the band. Some bands suit the name. I suppose that the Beatles suit the name the Beatles, don't they? But I think you know, if a band came out now and said they were called the Beatles, I think people would just think, you know, ignore them. So I suppose the music is what carried the Beatles, despite having a bit of a dodgy name. So yeah, Free probably suits them. A band who had a terrible name, The Bible. So yeah, you know, Google The Bible. How long is it going to take to find the actual band? And this is their debut album, and they did a couple of albums, really good albums, but terrible choice for a name. So yeah, The Bible. It's an album I bought really because of the cover and the name of the band. So it's Hooton's Tennis Club, and this is from 2015. And I like the album cover, and I like the name, but the music is not great. I played it a few times thinking, yeah, I want to get into it, but I didn't. They're from Chester or Liverpool, but yeah, avoid this at all costs. So yeah, Hooton's Tennis Club. I think Public Service Broadcasting is a pretty good name, but why am I showing Public Image Limited? So yeah, Public Image Limited. This is a channel that does no sort of editing skills. One, I haven't got any sort of editing to do on my videos, and plus, I know people just do little bits of editing sometimes, but some people go on long rambles and they're trying to make a point, certain channels, and they're editing all the time, and I'm thinking, can't you just speak without editing and put your point across? Anyway, so yeah, Public Image Limited is a great name for a band. So yeah, Public Image Limited. I'm getting confused. There's too many records here. What about the Temples? So the Temples are a sort of a British sight band, and the Temples sort of suits the band. If you're not aware of the Temples, you know, don't go sort of queuing up at midnight to buy an album by them, but they're okay. It's sort of a British sight band. So yeah, the Temples. British band from the sort of 2008 maybe, the Ting Tings. So there's the Ting Tings, and for about 9 months they were, you know, quite a popular band, and this is okay, but the band, the name, the Ting Tings, you know, sums them up really in a way, because after this album they just disappeared. I still have a few more. Teenage Fan Club. I think that's a good name for a band, Scottish band, and yeah, just clever name really. You sort of remember it for the right reasons. So yeah, Teenage Fan Club. And Parquet Courts. So I think Parquet Courts is a great name for a band, and they're a very good band from New York. There's a lot of sort of bands around at the moment who are sort of imitating Parquet Courts a little bit. And they are good bands, but Parquet Court's very strong. So yeah, Parquet Courts. I do like the name the Dead Kennedys. So yeah, I know in America, of course, the Kennedys are a huge family politically, and you know, I'm not an expert on American politics, but yeah, the sooner Trump goes, the better. But yeah, Dead Kennedys, good name for a band. Is a very, I think this is a very weak name for a band. So Weather Report. So yeah, I don't get Weather Report. You know, what's going on here? You know, I don't get this, and you know, a cigarette burning there, and you know, it's all very sort of. I do like Weather Report, but I think the name of the band is a little bit confusing, and yeah, not great. So yeah, Weather Report is a pretty bad name for a band. James, he's still watching. James, I think, is a, you know, pretty unimaginative name for a band, but it kind of works for them. They used to have T-shirts with the names on, and yeah, with James on, and different colours and daisies, and yeah, James sort of one of the sort of main Manchester bands, so I like the name James. Another Manchester band, of course, The Fall. So yeah, I like the name The Fall. I think The Fall's a really good name for a band. Sort of sums them up really. Short and sweet. With an attitude. The Brilliant Corners. I always like that name for a band. Being a big football fan. The Brilliant Corners from Bristol, really worth checking out. And the Human League. I always thought that was a good name for a band. Sort of bit of a statement, maybe. The Human League made you sort of interested in maybe what they were going to sound like, sort of when they burst on the scene in the very early 80s. So yeah, the Human League. I like that name for a band. I don't like the name Steely Dan. I'm a big fan of Steely Dan. I've got I've got all their albums, I think. But I just think the name's not great. So yeah, Steely Dan. I do like the name Bell and Sebastian. And there's a lot of love for this band. There's sort of, but you know, I do think they are a little bit overrated. I think people, you know, I mean, there's people out there who really love Bell and Sebastian, and you know, I've tried to really get into them, and I like this album, but I don't exactly think I just don't think they're that great. But they're okay. But the best thing about them is the name. So yeah, I like Bell and Sebastian. Take One of the Bunnymen, of course. One of my favourite sort of names for a band. Just was cool. The Rolling Stones. So yeah, the Rolling Stones is a better name than the Beatles, but it's like, you know, the Beach Boys sort of suited their name in the early 60s, but then as it got older, and the name didn't really suit them. But the Rolling Stones has been a good name because it sort of suited them all the way through the career really now. So yeah, the Rolling Stones. It's a good name for a band. This band, the Grateful Dead, sort of the name of the band stopped me listening to them for 50 years, and then when I listened to them through the VC, I had a little period where I was listening to them and enjoying them. I've sort of gone back to maybe my true feelings for them, but this just proves that you can have a name of a band and it can put people off. And it certainly put me off. And the Grateful Dead now are, they're pretty good, but the catalogue's massive, and where do you start? So yeah, got a couple of albums by the Grateful Dead. XTC, short and sweet. I mean, some people call them like ecstasy. I've seen a few people sort of getting the name a little bit wrong, but yeah, good name for a band, XTC. And finally, what about Earth, Wind and Fire? Just think it sums up the band. Sort of a clever name, simple, and a really good choice. So yeah, Earth, Wind and Fire, really good name for a band. So that's my response to Callum Rhodes. Callum's got a channel. He uploads videos from time to time. He's a young guy from Wakefield, and he's a big fan of the Smiths. So I thought I'd put a Smiths t-shirt on. So there's a few of my ramblings about my favourite band names. I literally just went through my collection and pulled a few out. So hopefully you stuck with my video. And this video's been all about music, no hate or anything like that. Save that to other people. So that's it from me. Thanks for watching this video. If you've got any comments, I always reply to your comments. I've noticed, people on the VC, people leave comments and they leave them hanging there. They don't answer them. But if someone takes the time to leave a comment, I'll always get back to you. I think it's important. So thanks for watching, and bye for now.